Hello ladies and gents, my name is James McCauley, or as I'm known on the interwebs, LessThanPi, and this is the 5th episode of the LessThanPi art show, the only art show on YouTube that is not about art. That's probably not true. Today I'm drawing Toadstool Tech Peach. As usual, you guys can hit me up in the comments if you have any questions about the art or what I'm doing. If you go to my blog, I have more detailed, in-depth analysis, I guess, of what I'm doing. But today I'm going to be talking about depth versus complexity in Super Smash Bros. 4. Smash Bros. 4, whatever, majig. First thing I want to do is get into a few definitions. In games, I define depth as the number of meaningful choices you have in any given situation. Now, just to clarify, that means if there's one optimal choice, but there's a whole bunch of choices, then there isn't much depth there. Depth is amazing. Depth is really cool. In fighting games, specifically, I define complexity as what you need to do to perform an action. So, do you have to push one button to grab or two buttons to grab? Do you need to do a whole bunch of things in a sequence to perform your one action to get to your end goal? You know, like a long string of buttons to perform a combo, for example. Complexity can be cool, and I'll get into that a little bit more. So the first thing I really want to do is congratulate Sakurai on creating the deepest, yet least complex fighting game pretty much ever. There's, I think, 4 buttons you push. There's an attack button, a special button, a shield button, and we'll count jump and grab too, so 5 buttons. And an analog stick, and through those very few things you have access to a whole plethora of moves. And then even within those you have very intuitive variations of moves, so like angled tilts, angled smashes, angled specials, smash specials, tilt specials, stuff like that. It's really you have a lot of meaningful options to choose from there. It's a very incomplex input method. If you compare that to something like Street Fighter 4, it's a deep game, but it's very complex, right? There are 3 punch buttons, 3 kick buttons. You press 2 buttons to grab, 2 buttons to focus attack. Each special has a different input. The fireball motion, Shoryuken motion, backwards fireball, charges, etc. You also have a different button you can push for each special. You can do 2 buttons for a special. There are long combo strings that don't leave a lot of room for creativity or adaptability. Generally, there's one best combo from one starter in every matchup. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. In Smash, for example, shielding is a deep option. It has a meaningful trade-off compared to not shielding. Your shield gets weaker over time, the more you shield. It covers less of your body, and you have risk of your shield breaking. In Street Fighter, blocking is not a deep option at all. You have high and low block, but there's no real disadvantage to either one. You just can't move forward on the same frame that you expect to block. So does that mean, am I trying to say complexity is bad? No, that's not what I'm saying. Complexity is great. There's a certain draw for complexity, but complexity does limit access to your game. There are a lot of people that don't want to dive into the complexity to get to the depth of a game. If you compare Street Fighter to Smash, you have a much steeper climb until you can reach the depth of the game. I believe Smash's accessibility has done far more to keep it a relevant and growing title for all 3 of its games. I've seen a lot of people confusing complexity for depth when it comes to Smash 4. Making a game faster doesn't make it deeper. The options available don't change with the game speed alone. Having combos can, but don't always make a game deeper. Advanced techniques, movement options, they don't make a game deep. But I think a few of these concepts can be a little tricky to understand, so let's try and unwrap them. I think one of the biggest draws to Smash in general is the combo system, particularly once we got DI, or directional influence, involved. Even while being attacked, a player has control over his launch trajectory, and their opponent, while still having an advantage, has to react and adapt to how his opponent chooses to DI. top level melee, however, there's usually a best way to DI so that your opponent can't follow up. Or you use attacks to guarantee your opponent can't use DI to escape your combos. When you have a best option, as I mentioned earlier, there isn't much depth there. Brawl changed that formula up a little bit. It kept DI, but it took away a lot of hit stun. Oftentimes there would be just enough hit stun so that a player could air dodge right before a follow-up would connect, or use a special move to outright beat any combo attempt. But the best option is not to always evade the follow-up. If you air dodge or throw out an attack but your opponent expects it, it puts you at risk for a larger punish. As a Brawl Sheik main, and a darn good one, if I do say so myself, baiting reaction in between my combos, or strings as we call them in Brawl, was my bread and butter. It really separated me from many of the other Sheiks, and it kept me relevant against vastly superior characters like Meta Knight or Snake or Marth, played by some of the strongest players in the country. I'm from, Central Florida, so you know how that goes. Do advanced techniques and movement options make the game deeper? Well, it can if it provides options with meaningful trade-offs. L-canceling does not add depth to the game. It adds complexity and raises the skill curve, but L-canceling is always 100% the most optimal choice. There's absolutely no meaningful trade-off involved. For example, if L-canceling halved your landing lag, but forced you to spot dodge or roll immediately after, that would add depth. Am I baiting a shield here? Am I unsure and I want to play it safe, so I'll roll back? Am I forcing myself on you and expecting you to respect my options? Something like that would add meaningful choice, and through it, depth to a mechanic like L-canceling. Advanced techniques like wave dashing, on the other hand, give players more meaningful options out of shield. They trade that invulnerability of dodges and spot dodges for quicker mobility options without that advantage. So, advanced techniques can provide depth, but they don't always have to. So you have to be a little wary if depth is your main goal. If we look at dash dancing, it gives players huge amounts of freedom in how they can move, but it completely eliminates the need to walk. Because you can pivot smash or wave dash or crouch cancel your run, there are really never any situations where you feel like walking is a good option. It's just a slower version of dashing. Removing dash dancing gives much more room for counterplay for your opponent and forces you to make more meaningful decisions on how you want to disengage or approach. When I look at these pre-release builds of Smash 4, I see a plethora, I love that word, of intuitive, meaningful options with low complexity. There's a lot of commitment in the options available, but through it, we are able to access to much more depth. I don't think the goal is to alienate the hardcore fan base, but instead to create a deeper experience that's easier to access for new players. As a competitive community, we need those new players in order to grow. I believe Smash 4 will do a better job of finding out who consistently picks better options as opposed to who can consistently perform the most optimal ones. I know that won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I think with the new games, that's the right direction to go, honestly. I believe that easy to grasp depth will make the game fun to watch and play for a very wide pool of people. But hey, what do I know? Agree, disagree, hit me up in the comments below. Do you really want to get involved in the Smash community? Make an account on SmashBoards.com and check out the thread I made for this video. The link's in the description. As always, guys, God bless, be safe, I'll see you next week.